Graphing. You're going to see graphing throughout college algebra, so you better learn how to graph now. First off, let's talk about graphing linear equations, which are nothing but lines. So to graph a line, you need 2 points. What you can do is choose any numbers you want for x, because there's an infinite number of possibilities for x, but you must find the y from the equation. Then you plot points to connect the dots. Now that's one way. But the best way is by far using the graphing calculator. So I'm going to do this first one by hand, and then that's going to be the last one I do by hand. Maybe not. So we have y equals 2x minus 1. I like to use a t-chart. I actually like to use a longer t-chart than most people do. I want you to see all the work that's going on. So x, since lines go forever in both directions, I can use any numbers I want for x. I like to use easy numbers, so I'm going to use 0 and 1 because, once again, they're easy. So what that means is, everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put a 0. And 2 times 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So that's 1 point. 0 was x, and negative 1 was y. Points are always of the form x, y. X comes before y. Always. X's go left, and y's go up and down. Now let's do the same thing for x equals 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. So when x was 1, y was 1. So 1 comma 1 is the second point. I can use the third point if I want to. But I really don't want to, though. You can. So I have 2 points. Now let's plot those. 0 and negative 1 is here. And 1, 1 is there. And now let's play connect the dots. Put an arrow on the end showing that the line never ends. Here's the way I really want to do it, though. Calculator. Remember what our equation was. It was y equals 2x minus 1. So let's type in 2x. This is our x key. Minus 1. And then graph. Does that look like about what we have? And let's just see for sure. We have our 2 points. 0, negative 1, and 1, 1. Let's look at the table. The table is yellow, so it's second graph. And do we have 0 and negative 1? Yep. How about 1, 1? Sure do. So we know we're right then. Graphing calculator makes life a whole lot easier. Let's do this next one. Now if you want to on this one, you can plot points, but I would not use a 1. I'd actually use multiples of the denominator. So I would use 0, 2, 4, so on, so on, so on. And in fact, when we use your calculator, you're probably going to see that. So let's type in 1 divided by 2x plus 3. Look at the graph. Just make sure we know how it looks. Let's look at the table. See, I don't want to use decimals, so that's why I wouldn't use a 1. I'd use 0, but I wouldn't use 1 because I don't want to use a decimal. So I'm going to use 2. So 0, 3 is 1 point, and 2, 4 is a second point. I can use another one if I want to. I can use a decimal. It really doesn't matter, but I'm not. I prefer not to. So 0, 3 is here. Then 2, 4 is there. Draw your line, connect the dots, and we have our graph. It's not so bad, the calculator. See what else we have here. Horizontal and vertical lines. Now these are kind of interesting. I'm going to plot points just so you can understand what's going on. You can read that all you want. But here's what it comes down to. For example, y equals 4. The only thing we know for sure is we're doing y equals 4 first. The only thing we know is that y is 4. So no matter how many points we have, no matter what they are, y has to be 4. X can be anything. So I can use 0 and 1. So what that means is I can plot 0, 4, and then 1, 4. And if you look at it, it's a horizontal line. That's because our y value is always 4, so we go up to y and we stay at 4 as we go up. No matter what the x's are, we always end up being at 4 when we go up. So, anytime it's y equals some number and there is no x value, that means it only goes through the y-axis. Now the x-axis, the only time it can go through the x-axis if it actually is the x-axis itself, y equals 0. Now you can also use your calculator, just type in y equals 4 and graph, and you'll see that. And if you look at the table, you'll see the y values are all 4. Now the problem is when it comes to graphing x equals -2, your TI-84 and your TI-83 may allow you to. This one won't. So what I'm going to do is just plot points. It says that x must be -2 no matter what. For each point, x is always -2. Y can be anything, so I'm going to use 0 and 1. So -2, 0 is there, and -2, 1 is there. So now I'm going to connect the dots. So this one is x equals -2, and this one is y equals 4. So what's going on with x equals -2, if we're going to x equals -2 and we're staying at -2, no matter what the y values are, we're still staying at -2. So -2, -2, 1, -2, 2, -2, 3, -2, -1, we're staying at x equals -2. X equals some number is always a vertical line because it only goes to the x-axis because there's only an x in the equation. Only time it doesn't is if we're actually graphing the y-axis, which is x equals 0. Backwards way, if I were to graph y equals -2, it's horizontal. If I will graph y equals -6, it's horizontal. That tells me that y equals anything is horizontal, which must mean that x equals anything is vertical. It's kind of a backwards way to think about it. Intercepts. Now this is a really important question. X-intercepts can also be used to graph a line. X-intercepts is where the line crosses the x-axis. And if you look at an x-axis or a coordinate plane, every point on the x-axis has a y value of 0. And then the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And if you look at any point on the y-axis, its x value is always 0. So to find the x-intercept, you set the y equal to 0, and to find the y-intercept, you set x equals to 0. That's it. So the key word, the key thing to remember when it comes to intercepts, always use 0. 0. So let's find the x-intercept first. And to find the x-intercept, we're actually going to let y be 0 because we're trying to find what x is. So we let the y be the 0. If you want to find the x-intercept, find x. So take the original equation and replace the y with 0. Then do the work. 3 times 0 is 0. And then 2x plus 0 is 2x. And then to solve, we divide both sides by 2. We get x equals -6. Now the x-intercept has an x value of -6, and the y value we substituted was 0. So that's our x-intercept. Now to do the y-intercept, guess what we're going to do? We're going to let x be 0 because we want to find y. So take the original equation, replace the x with the 0. When you multiply by 0, you get 0, which means it goes away, and we're left with 3y equals -12. Divide both sides by 3, and we get y equals -4. And so we had a y value of -4. Y always comes second. X always comes first, and x was 0. And that's all you do. I always use 0 for the intercepts. Now, one last question I want to ask is how to graph a nonlinear equation. You can plot points, but you're going to have to use more than one point because nonlinear means it's not a line. So you actually have to use quite a few points. 0, 1, 2, and then you use some negatives. Negative 1, negative 2. You have to use quite a few. But what you're going to find out is the calculator makes life a lot easier. So let's type in x squared plus 6 graph. That's a big old U. The thing about the calculator is, when we look at the table, we have all kinds of points. Something else you need to be aware of. You look at the graph. I want that low point. So I'm going to show you how you can find that low point. Well, I'm really not in this video. There's other videos I'll make. But if you look, we're going to use some of these points, and we're going to draw the graph. So let's just use 0, 6. What's the equation? Okay. Negative 1, 7. Then negative 2, 10. Let's go the other direction. 1, 7. Now some of these, when you do points by hand, or if you do it with the calculator, you start seeing the pattern. So that's what I'm saying about plotting points. You see a pattern. A lot of times you'll see a pattern fairly quickly. So you get a rough estimate of how this graph looks. It's a U. It's called a parabola. You'll learn more about that in college algebra. There you go. Calculator can make life a lot easier for you. You paid a lot of money for it, might as well use it. And that's the last example. So, use your calculator whenever in doubt.